Was I supposed to do something this day? I don't remember what I had to do. But something feels wrong. I feel like I had to do something. Oh. I gotta record a video today. God. Second video of the week. I think I should probably take a bath. It won't take long. Oh, it took a long time to just take a bath. I have the same hairstyle, the same shirt, and the same pajamas. Because that didn't happen 3 days ago, okay? I didn't try to record in the middle of those 3 days. Hello and welcome back to, let's just call it the early show with Michael Knightsburg. That's because I like watching the Stephen Colbert show, or whatever it's called, the Late Show. And, so just, let's make it a early show.
Michael Knightsburg.
So if you're new here, I just want to introduce myself to you. I am a very popular and very powerful conservative YouTuber. I'm a conservative speaker, and with over 3 active subscribers, I have a lot of influence, and I'm a force to be reckoned with. I just want to let you know that I have never blazed in my entire life. I never did that. I've never blazed in my entire life. I definitely didn't do it last week on my friend's rooftop. I didn't do that. That didn't happen. So according to Jeff Sessions, I am a good boy. I'm a very good boy.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
As people get a lot of shit for not disclosing the sponsorship, I just want to put it out that this video is sponsored by the GOP and Jeff Sessions. This message has been brought to you by the GOP and Jeff Sessions. I just want to say that drugs are bad. They actually are bad. Don't do them. But because Jeff Sessions sponsored this video, I just want to say that drugs are bad and that you should never do them. And whoever uses drugs or sells them should be put in prison. Wait a second. My studio is telling me that it already happens. People who sell drugs are put in prison. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, not being sarcastic, but just last year, 64,000 people died because of drug overdose. And it's not even funny, but it's like, this is a big issue. One man saw this coming. One man saw these things as a public health hazard. So he was born in 19 and a half. His name was Richard Nixon. And being the pious Christian man that he was, he laid the groundwork that would stop drugs coming into the United States forever. And he's an idol of mine because being a white and being the pure breed brown muzzy male that I am inspired by Richard Nixon. If I'm being honest, Richard Nixon is a person whose ideas resonate with me. Whenever I hear his words, I get touched emotionally. I really do. I really do feel like a changed man whenever I hear his words. And I believe that he was one of the most genius men ever born because he laid the groundwork. He laid a system of the market which clearly didn't exist before, that no one had thought of before, and he was an amazing human being. He was truly a genius. And he and his biased soul set about to solve the problem of drugs forever. Well, how did he do it? Well, he set about to solving the problem by getting rid of the problem itself. I mean, if there are no drugs, how can there be addiction? How can there be overdoses? That is a smart man. And the pure act of a Christian man proved to be a successful thing because in 2015, 1.5 million people were arrested due to drug offenses. I'm surprised that Donnie by 45 wasn't arrested because Jesus Christ, what drugs is he on? I mean, no, Donald Trump is a great
Donald Trump because he says
genius,
he said.
intelligent,
He's brave and he's
beautiful,
strong.
handsome
He's good with
man.
money and can help us out of debt. And his cut and dry policies can and will work. Donald Trump truly cares about America, and I really believe he wants to do what's best for all of us.
Americans are so not pure and so not Christian that of those 1.5 million people arrested, 57% of them were colored. It's like white people don't even do drugs. They don't. They just don't because they're Christian and they're pure. Well, arresting those 1.5 million people and many millions of people before that didn't prove to be a successful thing because whatever the government did, the supplies kept constant. Remember when I told you that Richard Nixon was one of the most genius people ever born? Well, I say that because he invented a principle of the market which no one had thought of before. Richard Nixon basically fucked the fact that there are two sides of the market, supply and demand. Well, the genius of Richard Nixon and all the presidents after him, all the great Christian presidents after him, was that they understood that drug users don't care if the supply is low. They'll just want drugs. They don't care. They don't give a fuck what if the market doesn't have enough cocaine. They'll just get it themselves. They'll just sell their penis for that shit, okay? They don't give a fuck. They'll just buy the drugs. And that is the genius of presidents because they didn't they did know about the markets and the two sides of the market, supply and demand. If the demand is kept constant, someone will fill it up. Someone will fill the supply. That is why since the war on drugs was launched, the supply of drugs kept constant. Now, as a Christian man, I have responsibility to call out my president whenever I can. Whenever I see my president doing the wrong thing, I will criticize him. I will correct him. And at this point, he's incorrect. We want to stop drugs. We gotta look at the market. I mean, Nixon, you were a genius, but your ideas that didn't prove to be worthy. They're like communism. Sounds good on paper, but doesn't. The war on drugs is rather stupid. If we say that we have won World War II, that'd be accurate because we are still not fighting Japan. We're still not in war with Philippines or whatever. Or Germany. The war is over. We have moved on. The war is done. The war on drugs, on the other hand, is completely different because the war on drugs is still going on. If we have won the war on drugs, that means that there is no cocaine, there is no marijuana, which I didn't smoke last week. There are no drugs. And frankly, I can't admit that fact. As I've said before, the drugs market doesn't really depend upon supply. It isn't a supply sensitive market, so even if in a normal market, if supply is down, demand goes down eventually. But here, whatever you do, the demand keeps constant because people are, well, let's get it straight. They're addicts. So they don't give a fuck whatever is happening in the market. And actually, when you're fighting to stop drugs coming into the United States or whatever, you actually make cartels stronger. But how is that possible? Well, the less drugs in the market, the more expensive it becomes. And who's making that money? The cartels. So in the end, you're just making more the cartels more stronger, giving them more employees, and you know, it's you're funding it's a inverse ratio. So instead of focusing on the supply, let's focus on the demand side of the market. Laws were made to protect one person from another, but the war on drugs is meant to protect a person from himself. It doesn't make sense, does it? The duty to protect one from himself is known as morals, and governments don't get to dictate morals. That's the job of religion, or if you're an atheist. In Switzerland in the 1970s, people started dying because of HIV and heroin overdose. So the Swiss authorities said like, okay, we gotta stop making cheese for a few moments and just realize that we gotta help people who are in need. So what they did was they said that, okay, we can't stop these things from coming into our country. That's impossible. So let's just help people who are addicts. So they gave them clean needles, they gave them pure cocaine or heroin. I'm not an expert in these matters. Social workers, they basically help them to, instead of focusing on just sponsoring their addiction, they basically help them get jobs, get a new house, you know, move around with people, you know, be with people, stop being alone. And that really reduced the amount of deaths, basically. In 10 years, 50% of the deaths were reduced. And that is a simple thing. But in America, what happens is the victims are punished. And that isn't acceptable in my and many other liberals' books. That isn't acceptable. So this thing that Switzerland did was actually known as a harm reduction. It's just like fastening your seatbelt when you're in a car. You know that you could have a fatal crash, so you just want to reduce the amount of damage that could do. If you're in a donkey cart, you just wear your helmet. And that is the sort of thing that really works out, instead of the hardline policies. Now this argument has been lifted from Kurzgesagt. If you don't know him or them, give them some love, please. For the 3 people who watch me. And I really, really love those guys. They really changed my mind. And I plan to do the same thing. So I will see you soon. I'm so excited to make more content on Ben the Demon. Thank you so much. And my 3 or 4 subscribers, thank you so much. I love you guys. And I will see you soon. Thank you.